You also have what might show up on the exam. It's going to be just a side note. You have a corporation and you have an S corporation. They might every so often these two show up on the exam. A regular corporation is, let's bring this in. Okay, you have a corp, S corp. Okay, corporation is what that stands for. A standard corporation, a large company, IBM, Toshiba, all these big companies, Sony. Okay, they're famous for what's called double taxation. Okay, this might show up, so I know it's a side off tangent, but be aware. They have double taxation is what they're famous for. Basically, money comes into the corporation. Okay, so it comes in, it gets taxed here before it goes out to the shareholders. Once the shareholders get the money, it gets taxed again. So that same money gets taxed twice on a standard corporation. Then you have an S corp, which they call a pass-through. Pass-through. This is how this works. Money comes into the bottom line and it sinks through the bottom line, goes out to the shareholders, and it's only taxed at that one level. S corporations, small. Okay, so small, think small, use that S. Small companies, 100 or less, up to 100 of these companies. All right, so they might, but either way, whether it's an S corp or a standard corporation, how do they hold ownership? Severalty. That's right, severalty, and that's your individuals as well. Okay, these three are partnerships. Easy to remember, partnerships. Okay, so you have in common. You have in common. This is the only ownership where you can have unequal interest. You can will it. Okay, you can will it. It's like you own your portion by yourself. It's an undivided interest, basically. No, it can be divided, excuse me, scratch that. Okay, in common, you can will it, you can sell your interest. In apartment complexes, we see that quite a bit, where there'll be a partnership with 3 or 4 people, and I'll see it on the, not on the MLS, but I'd see it in the commercial area where we'll say $2 million for this 200 unit thing, and you're like, well, that's really cheap downtown, wherever. And but when you read it, it will say something like, this is for 1/4 interest in the partnership that owns that building. All right, see that? So you can see that in common as well. If you own a timeshare, how do you own ownership? Timeshare in common. Timeshares usually vacation homes, right? You'll have the same unit, 5 people will own it, or 6 people, or 10 people, or 12 people. Some people will own it for a month, some people own it for a week. All right, so that's going to be tenancy in common. All right, unequal interest, you can will it. So you can put somebody on your will saying that when you pass away, they're going to have your interest. Then we have the next partnership is joint tenancy. It's going to be joint tenancy with rights of survivorship. Okay, joint tenancy with rights of survivorship. Everybody has equal interest. Equal. Cannot will it. Can't will it. Okay, one of your questions is going to go something like, Bob, Al, and Tom own his joint tenancy with rights of survivorship. They're just going to say the joint tenancy part. Bob has a will that says his son is going to inherit his interest in the real estate when he passes away. When Bob passes away, who owns the real estate? Al and Tom. It automatically transfers. So now it went from 1/3 to 1/2. Okay, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 to 1/2, 1/2. You can partition your interest. A suit to partition would be basically one of these people don't want to be partners anymore. Okay, so let's say that Tom doesn't want to be a partner anymore, so he partitions, or he has his interest partitioned out. He has 1/3 partitioned out. These two, and he sells it. He sells it to I don't know, Tammy. Okay, so Tammy's now the owner. Tom doesn't own anymore. Tom sold his 1/3 interest. Bob and Al still remain joint tenancy with rights of survivorship because they're still on the same deed. They took possession at the same time, but Tammy did not take possession at the same time, and she's not on their deed. So she becomes a tenancy in common. But the other two remain joint tenants. Okay, see how that works? Okay. She can will her interest. Absolutely. Thank you for that. She can will her interest. Okay. Tenancy by the entirety. It's seldom used anymore. It used to give an extra protection to either husband and wife. And I do have some properties with tenancy by the entirety. So it's husband and wife only. Okay, husband and wife only. All right, let's say Bob and Sally, and let's do this. Bob and Sally, Bob and Sally grew up in the same small town together, and when they got married when they were 14 years old. Can they sign documents now and have it be valid? Yeah, that's right. Unmarried minors. That's the first thing this question's going to test to see if you know. I mean, married minors can sign contracts. Okay, so they got married and they bought their first house together. Several years went by and they had a bitter divorce. They basically outgrew each other. And so Sally moved out and moved to another state. They got divorced, never thought of anything. Bob got remarried, and he's been married to his second wife for 30 years. And they live in that little house that they originally, Bob and Sally, bought together. When one day Bob passed away, who owns that house? Sally. Okay, the first wife is gonna own it. So that's one of the scenarios on that you might see. Tenancy by the entirety. Okay, another tenancy by the entirety might be an older man went to and they're gonna say older man because it's an older type of ownership. An older man went to a real estate broker's office and says that he wants to sell his property. What should the broker tell him to do? Go home and get your wife. It takes one person to sign a contract.